All right, part 2 of using trig ratios. So that was just the intro. Okay, remember, what's our mnemonic? SOHCAHTOA. I actually like this way of writing it. Oh, that's a terrible O. Hold on. Better, because it reminds me that I'm writing ratios or fractions. Okay, SOHCAHTOA. So remember, S is for sine. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. C is for cosine, and it is adjacent over hypotenuse. And T is for tangent, which is opposite over adjacent. Now, if you look at this page and if you look down at the bottom, you're not just going to write fractions. You're actually going to have to write an equation and solve. Geometry always seems to circle back to write an equation and solve. So here are the steps you're going to take. You have to figure out which ratio to use based on the picture that they gave you. Based on the picture. So you're going to mark your angle. Okay. Mark the angle that they are giving you. Okay. You'll notice if you look down at the bottom, there's only one angle that has a number in it. That's the angle you want to mark. Not the 90-degree angle. Remember, we don't use the 90-degree angle to write trig functions. All right, then you're going to label the sides. Okay, just like we have. Label the sides in reference to that angle. So there's only 3 possible pairings that you can have. Opposite over hypotenuse, that would be your sine. Adjacent over hypotenuse, that is your cosine. Or opposite and adjacent. There is no other option there, sine, cosine, or tangent. Then you're going to choose the right one. Meaning, remember, opposite and hypotenuse is sine. Adjacent over hypotenuse, once again, is cosine. And opposite over adjacent. Now, once you figure out what trig function you need to use, then you're going to set it up. And you're going to write your trig name. Okay, so right here, you're either going to write sine, cosine, or tangent. Okay, then you're going to put your angle. And this is going to be a number from your picture, your angle measure from your picture. And then you're going to say equals side over side, okay, which will either be opposite over hypotenuse, adjacent over hypotenuse, or opposite over adjacent. Now, probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now. Let's look at it. So let's look at this first example right here. Okay. They want me to figure out what this side is. How do I know? Because there's an X. X means I don't know what it is. Some of you might go, well, I can do Pythagorean theorem because it's a right triangle. The reason Pythagorean theorem does not work here is because this right here, this 29, that is not a side. That is an angle. Pythagorean theorem just works with the sides of a right triangle, not an angle. Okay? And you can't pretend all of a sudden that it is a side. It's not. It's an angle. So when that happens, I go, okay, well, I can now use a trig ratio. Can't do Pythagorean theorem because 29 degrees is not a side, it's an angle, but I do have trig, and I can use that. So step 1, you need to mark your angle. Okay, and I circled it, but I'm going to do this right here because that's how I mark angles. Now I have to label my sides. Strongly suggest that you only label the 2 sides that have something on them. That way you won't start getting yourself confused. Okay. So looking at my picture, hopefully I realize and see very quickly, oh, 34 is my hypotenuse. Okay. It's the longest side. It's across from my right angle. Now I need to label this side that has the X on it. Okay. It wouldn't make sense to try to label this bottom of my triangle because there's no information on that. Okay, so it's not helpful. So we need to label this side in blue. So you have to ask yourself, is it opposite the angle that they are telling me to use, or is it adjacent to that angle? Okay, I know it's not the hypotenuse, I already labeled that. So again, it is opposite. Opposite means across from, adjacent means next to / touching the angle. So I have opposite and a hypotenuse. Those are the two pieces of information they're giving me along with the angle. Then once you have that, you have to ask yourself, which trig function is opposite over hypotenuse? Or which trig function has opposite and hypotenuse? Sine. That is your SO. There's your O, there's your H. So now we got to set up an equation. We're not just going to write a fraction like we did in the other one. So step 4 says set up and solve your equation. So what trig function did we say this is? Sine. Okay. Of what's the angle that I am using as my reference angle? What angle did I use to label opposite? Yeah, I used the 29, so I'm going to say sine of 29 degrees equals, okay, now I got to do the side over side. Now I'm going to write my fraction. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so I'm going to put x over 34. Now what you have to be careful of, don't always just slap the x on the top part, because it may not go there. It does because it's opposite over hypotenuse. But it's not always going to be the numerator of your fraction. Now I have to solve this. Oh boy. Not hard. Okay, actually your calculator will do 95% of the work. But obviously you cannot solve an equation that has a word in it. Okay, so C sine. So we're going to use Desmos and figure out what the sine of 29 degrees is. Okay, and I don't expect you to know what the sine of 29 degrees is. So we'll come to Desmos. Okay. And you got to hit functions. I'm just looking. There you see them. They have more because there are more trig functions. Hold on 1 second. Okay, yeah, that's what I want to check. Before you do this, before you start using Desmos, hit your wrench up here in the corner. Okay, does everybody see how the radians down at the very bottom is highlighted? Okay, you want to highlight or click on degrees. Okay. This is like if you use the graphing calculators, you may not have ever used them, I'm not sure, but you have to change it to degrees. Okay. So let me show you how to do that again, because if you don't, it's going to give you the wrong answer. Okay, and you're not going to know it. It's not going to say, hey, this is the wrong answer. Just when you're solving these problems, you're going to get all the wrong answers, and you're not going to know why. So hit your wrench. Okay, radians will probably be highlighted. Hit degrees. You want it in degrees. Okay, because our angles are in degrees, so you want that to be in the right mode. So to get to your trig ratios on Desmos, hit function down here. We are doing sine, so that is in the left column, very first one, not sine to the -1. We will do that tomorrow, but not today. So you're just going to hit sine, and it'll put sine. Now, sine of what? 29. I don't have to try and fool with the degree symbol because I already told it over here in my settings or my wrench to put it in degrees. And so I get a big long decimal. Okay, let's round that. We're going to go 4 numbers out though. So we're going to say 0.4848. Now, how do we get rid of fractions in algebra? You basically put this over 1 and cross multiply. Okay, once we get rid of the word sign, and we did that by using Desmos, you just put it over 1, cross multiply. 1 times x, 1x, or x. 0.4848 times 34. I don't know. $16.4832. Okay. They didn't specify, but let's round to the nearest tenth here, since we're talking about a side measure. And that would be 16.5. Okay, so what we just figured out is that this side right here is 16.5 units long. Okay, they didn't tell me the units, so I don't know if they're meters or centimeters. Okay, so it's just another way to find a side length, okay, like we did with Pythagorean theorem, just with different information. Again, we couldn't use Pythagorean theorem because the 29 is an angle, not a side. So let's try another one. All right. 32 degrees is my angle. I'm going to mark the two pieces of information they're giving me. So they're telling me that this side is 28 and this side is x. I'm not going to mark this side over here because there's no information on it. Okay. Now if you want to make sure you got all three markings, that's fine. But sometimes people get confused when they mark all three because they don't know what trig function to use. So, looking at my picture, I realize 28 is my hypotenuse. So I'm going to label that. Okay, if you can, always label the hypotenuse. If you have the hypotenuse marked, label that first. So now I need to label this side. Okay, and obviously it's going to be opposite or adjacent. Look at your angle. If you need to. That points to the opposite side, which I'm not going to write because there's nothing on there. So if that's the opposite side, this has to be adjacent. Or some of you probably just looked at it and said, well, I know just by looking at it, this side is next to this angle, so adjacent. Either way. So you have the hypotenuse and you have the adjacent side. Now you have to figure out which trig function has both of those pieces in it. So you say SOHCAHTOA, you look at your SOHCAHTOA. Okay, you're looking for the one that has adjacent and hypotenuse. Okay, so that would make it cosine. So this time instead of sine, it's going to be cosine. What's my angle? 32 degrees equals, so trig function, trig ratio, angle equals, now we write our fraction. Okay. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so what did I label as adjacent? What did I label as my hypotenuse? So that's done. Now it's just a matter of simplifying this. Again, I cannot solve an equation when I have a word in it. So go to Desmos. It is cosine, so hit functions, hit cosine. What's my angle? 32 degrees. Okay. I make sure that I'm in degree mode because if I'm in radian mode, it's going to give me the wrong information and then I'm going to get the wrong answer and not realize it. So again, when you do these, go 4 out. Okay, 0.8480. 0.8480. That gets rid of the word, and now I just have a weird-looking algebra equation. Put this over 1, cross multiply. 1 times x, x. 0.8480 times 28. It's 23.744. Since now we're finding the side measure, just round to the nearest tenth, since they haven't specifically told us which way. Okay. And so this side is 23.7 units long. And again, you can make sure you're in the right ballpark. Okay, 23.7, it's technically a leg. It needs to be shorter than my hypotenuse. It is. Now, if I did this and I came up with 152 as my answer, then I know I did something wrong because it cannot be bigger than my hypotenuse. Okay, so I would back up. Did I make a math mistake? Type something wrong into the calculator. Okay, and then I would keep backing up. Oh, maybe I wrote the wrong trig function. Okay, so yeah, you can use your answer to make sure you're in the right vicinity. So I'm going to give you guys a minute to see if you can do this one. Okay, here's your angle. See if you can label x and 43 and figure out your trig function. Just write the equation. Don't try to solve it. Because if on the off chance you make a mistake, which is fine, I don't want you doing all the work behind it. So give you a minute. Label your sides. See if you can figure out, is it sine, is it cosine, is it tangent? And then write your little equation. All right, let's see what you got. So there's my angle, 61 degrees. Okay, now I got to mark or label the pieces that have markings. So I need to label this side and this side. Okay, and what I noticed just by looking at the picture that those are legs. So neither one of these is a hypotenuse. Okay, my hypotenuse is the longest side. It's opposite my right angle. It would be over here. This would be my hypotenuse. So I'm not using that side. I'm not going to label it. So I need to label adjacent and opposite. So across from my angle, that's opposite. Okay. This side is next to / touching my angle, so that's adjacent. Okay. So I have adjacent and I have opposite. So now I got to decide which trig function has those two pieces. And again, if you haven't, you do need to memorize this, but if you have not, here's our little mnemonic, SOHCAHTOA. Which one has adjacent and opposite? A and O. Yep, good. I'm just rewriting that because the O looked like a D. Tangent has both of those pieces. So the trig ratio that I want to use is tangent. So tangent, what's the angle that I use? 61 degrees equals opposite over adjacent. So what did I label as opposite? X. What did I label as adjacent? 43. All right, so now we've got to solve this. We're not done. Yay, we wrote the right equation. Tangent 61 equals x over 43. So now we need to change tangent 61 into a decimal. We're glad we have Desmos because in the olden days, I'm dating myself, we used to have to look these up in the back of our math book and follow this big, huge chart and look these up. So you guys just have to type it in the calculator. And it tells you we had to dig through, pages of charts to find this. So 1.8040 Again, always go 4 numbers behind your decimal. 1.8040. Okay, that is what the tangent of 61 degrees is. And that helps us eliminate the word tangent, so we're not trying to solve it with tan in it. Put it over 1, cross multiply. Okay. This is called solving proportions. 1 times x is x. And then I just got to do 1.8040 times 43. Gives me 77.572. Let's round to the nearest tenth. So that would become 77.6. Oops. Okay, so that is, we can't really run it up against our hypotenuse to see if we're in the right area because there's no number, but 77.6 seems reasonable if this side is 43. Again, can't really see if it's, we can't compare it to the hypotenuse because we don't have it, so. So, I want you guys to try, try this one. Just write the equation. Okay. See what you come up with. Give you a minute to do so. Mark your angle, label your sides that they give you, figure out what trig function it is, and set it up. All right, so let's see what you got. Mark your angle. All right, that's my angle. Now I look, I got x for this side, and I got 28 for this side. I go, oh, 28, hypotenuse. I like hypotenuse. Now I just need to label this side that has the x on it. So I have to decide, is it opposite the 32-degree angle or adjacent? Okay, and I look, here's my 32, here's my side. That is next to, it's adjacent. So I have hypotenuse and adjacent. I have to figure out what trig function has h and a, SOHCAHTOA, cosine. So cosine 32 equals adjacent over hypotenuse, ka, a over h, x over 28. So see if that's what you got. If you didn't, make corrections. Don't leave the wrong information on your notes. That's never helpful when you go back to look at it. Okay. And in the essence of time, I'm not going to solve these because solving, get the decimal, put it over 1, cross multiply. I want to get you guys working on this by yourself. So you guys, again, give you 2 minutes this time. I probably should have just had you do all 3 of them and then go from there. But I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes this time. See if you can write these 2 equations. And then we'll check them. Don't solve them, just to save some time. We are going to do the bottom 2 because they like real world, so I want you to feel confident with the real world questions too. So you're just writing the two equations, don't solve them. Mark your angle, label the two pieces that they have given you. Figure out sine, cosine, tangent, and write your equation. Make sure you're doing both. If you're done, just hang tight. Let people finish up. All right, let's see if you got these set up right. Again, not solving just to save a little time, because solving is the same other than the decimals change. All right, so mark your angle. Remember, they call that your reference angle. Sometimes they'll call it theta. They're being super fancy. So I got this side that's marked 25, and I got this side that has the X on it. So I like this because I can find the hypotenuse the fastest. It's the longest side across from your right angle. Now I need to label the side with the X, so I use this angle, my reference angle, to decide, is it opposite or is it adjacent to the 30 degrees? Hopefully everybody sees it's opposite, it's across from. Okay, so that makes it opposite. I'm not going to label adjacent because there's nothing there, I don't need it. So now I got to go, which trig function has O and H, opposite and hypotenuse? That would be sine. So sine, what's my angle? 30 degrees equals, now I got to write my ratio, opposite, what did I label as opposite? Over, what did I label as hypotenuse? Bam. Sine 30 equals x over 25. So again, if you made a mistake, please correct it on your notes. Don't leave the wrong information on notes. Never helpful. All right, same last one in this section. Mark your angle. It's 57 degrees. Look at the pieces that they gave you. They gave us this X and this 48. I look and I see, oh, no hypotenuse. Okay, so it's either opposite and adjacent. Opposite is across from, yep. Adjacent is next to / touches the angle. Okay, again, I know it's not a hypotenuse because there's nothing over on this side right here. So I'm not going to write hypotenuse. There's no number. So now I got to figure out which trig function has those two pieces, my adjacent and my opposite. I think SOHCAHTOA. Okay, which one has both? Tangent. So you write your trig. Tan, what's my angle? 57 equals, don't forget your equals. See, some people forget equals. It is an equation, so write your equals. Now, watch this, because this is going to happen, and some of you are going to tell me that tangent 57 equals x over 48. That is wrong. Tangent is your TOA, right? And it says opposite over adjacent. What do we have labeled as opposite? The 48 over, what's my adjacent? X. So pay attention to that. Do not get in the habit of always putting x on the top of your fraction because it's not always going to belong there. And if you just throw it up top, your whole equation is wrong. Now, we actually are going to solve this one because the algebra has an extra step. So, tangent 57 equals 48 over x. Again, I need to get rid of that word tangent. So to do that, I hit tangent 57, gives me the decimal, 1.5398. Okay, so I want to round that. That actually becomes 1.540, right? That would round to 1.540. So 1.540. And again, I did that so I don't have words in my equation. Still equal to 48 over x. Put it over 1, cross multiply. Now, notice this. Usually when the x is on top, I say 1 times x and write 1x or just x. Okay. Now it's not that, right? It's 1 times 48, which I can do. That's not a hard thing. But I'm actually going to do this cross multiply first because I want my variable on the left because most of you guys like your variable on the left. So 1.540 times x, okay, it's just 1.540x. Okay, just like if it was 1 times x, it would be 1x, or 2 times x, it would be 2x. Okay, don't get thrown because it's a decimal instead of a whole number. Equals 1 times 48. Now, could you have done 1 times 48 first? Sure. Then yours would have been 48 equals, then you would have done 1.540 times x, and you would have written it like this. It's the same problem. It's just a lot of you like the variable on the left. Okay, both of these will give you the same answer. Now I want to get x by itself. How do I get x by itself? I divide, just like if that was just 15. Did I write that decimal right? 1.54, yeah. Well, technically I should say 0, 0, right? If I go 4 numbers behind my decimal, this should be another 0. Okay. Not that it's going to change anything. So divide both sides. So 48 divided by 1.540, technically 0, doesn't change my answer. 31.16, da-da-da-da-da. Let's round to the nearest, again, tenth. So x is 31 point, I forgot what I said, 2. Jeez. And again, they don't tell us the units, so don't just throw the x on top. Okay? You got to follow what your fraction is. Opposite over adjacent, 48 over x. Okay? When the x lands in the bottom, you just have an extra step in the algebra. All right, real quick, let's look at these real world. Do not let these throw you off. Okay, they're not done any differently, but some of y'all think you can't do it. Who cares? Just look, they want x. Okay, they're talking about a shadow and a lamp, angle of elevation. Okay, all of that can make your head hurt. They do give us information here, though. They want nearest tenth. Okay, so they do tell us what to round to our final answer. But look, guys, this is just a right triangle. Okay. If you don't like the sun and the lamp and the shadow, redraw it. This side is x, this side is 10. They told me this angle is 58 degrees. And then go to town. Okay. Mark your reference angle. The angle they're giving you. They called it the angle of elevation. Okay, cool. 58. Mark the two sides. We got 10 and x. I notice, looking at my picture, there's nothing on the hypotenuse, so I'm not going to label that. This would be the opposite side of your angle, which makes this your adjacent. Okay, it is next to. Which trig function has opposite adjacent? We just did it, right? Tangent. What's my angle? 58 equals, please don't forget your equals. Okay, you're writing an equation, it needs to have an equals. Opposite over adjacent. And look, the x is on the bottom again. Okay, so don't get in the habit of saying x over 10. Nope. Opposite over adjacent. You gotta follow what it actually is and how you labeled your picture. Okay. So again, just to save time, not gonna solve it. If you need me to solve it, okay, let me know. Send me a message or just, raise your hand. Nursery plants a new tree, attaches a guy wire to support the tree while the roots take hold. An 8-foot wire is attached to the tree and to a stake in the ground. From the stake in the ground, the angle of elevation of the connection with the tree is 42 degrees. Find it to the nearest tenth of a foot, the height of the connection point to the tree. Okay, again, that would make your head hurt. Okay, that makes my head hurt. But look what you got. It's just a right triangle. Okay? And again, they try to throw you off by talking about angle of elevation and guy wires and support and da-da-da-da-da. Oh, that's not right, is it? Okay, now if you redraw it, don't put your stuff in the wrong place, otherwise you're going to do weird stuff. There we go. Okay, redraw it if you don't want all the junk. Okay, it's a right triangle. You have an angle and a side. That's trig. Mark your angle. Label the two sides that they have information on. Oh, look, 8 is my hypotenuse. I like it when they give me the hypotenuse because it makes my life easier. Now I have to decide this side right here. Is it opposite or adjacent to this angle? Okay, it's opposite. It is across from. There's nothing on the adjacent side. There's nothing labeled on this bottom, so I'm not going to label it. What trig function has opposite and hypotenuse? Sine. What's my angle? 42. Equals, we're writing an equation, opposite, oh, this time it is my x, over, what did I label hypotenuse? 8. Then you would find your decimal and cross multiply and solve it for x. So, some people don't have a problem with this and they run through it and breeze through it. Some people struggle with this. If you struggle, okay, let me know. I'll be glad to help. Virtual, if you're virtual, we can schedule a one-on-one Zoom. If you're in class, I can help you when you get to school. So just let me know if you are having any difficulties. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye.